All right, let's see. Ice baths and cold showers can convert fat cells into fat torching machines. If a little cold water does that, I wonder what... Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run liftandbalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and highly sarcastic manner. Today, we are breaking down one of the society-designated supervillains of our modern day, and why we may want to focus the finger pointing to that evil puppeteer instead. That is the first and last Pinocchio joke there is. We are talking fat and chronic inflammation, and specifically how chronic low-dose inflammation can downregulate our fat-burning capabilities.
What did you say?
Thus keeping us in a degraded, disease-promoting cellular and metabolic state. So we'll start out with a brief outline of what type of fat we have, their metabolic activity, and how inflammation impacts our ability to burn that fat. And of course, we will finish up with a few strategies that you can implement to lower inflammation and improve fatty acid oxidation, aka fat burn. So, without further ado, let's eat knowledge and maybe a snack, depending on how long this takes. Not all fat is the same. There is no denying that we are in the middle of an accelerating global health crisis. And I'm not talking about the one you see in the news every day. I'm talking about the rapid increase in the prevalence of chronic health conditions such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, hypertension, neurodegenerative disease, and yes, obesity. Otherwise known as the unhealthy expansion of our adipose tissue. And this unhealthy expansion of our fat stores is tightly associated with 1, chronic inflammation, and 2, all of the other metabolic conditions that we just talked about. So let's see why all fat is not created equal. When we break down fat logically, there are 2 main categories. 1 being pretty harmless, kind of like the Pillsbury Doughboy, and the other, well, kind of the opposite of harmless, like those Keebler elves. I don't know about you, just the vibe is off with those guys. Just something about them you can't trust. First, your subcutaneous fat. This is the fat that accumulates in those oh so flattering areas that we love, like our love handles, our butt, our arms and our legs. You know, that fat that you want to destroy with a vengeance. But guess what? From a metabolic and disease promoting standpoint, this fat really isn't that bad. In fact, when we are talking about longevity, having moderate amounts of this type of fat is actually correlated with a longer, healthier life. Who would have thunk? But I can't say the same for its evil cousin, accumulating in the deepest depths of our core, holding a magnifying glass to our organs simply because it likes to see our metabolic world burn. Whoa, production team, getting a little dark there with the script. Yeah, we'll talk about this later. Don't want to get on their bad side. This is visceral fat, or that deep fat that accumulates and hardens in and around our organs, secreting pro-inflammatory cytokines, revving up the immune system and putting us in a low dose state of chronic inflammation. Yeah, not a pretty picture. Now those love handles are looking pretty good, huh? But wait, there is more. Let's talk about the metabolic activity associated with the fats that we just described. Otherwise, what we'll call its burn potential. Brown and white adipose tissue. First, we have our white fat. White fat makes up the majority of our fat stores. Its job description includes storing energy and secreting hormones to signal the rest of the body. Some notable ones are adiponectin and leptin, which are key in energy storage and satiety signaling, which is kind of important. This fat is very metabolically inactive, meaning it just likes to sit there and Netflix and chill. Grab a soda and some popcorn and just vibe out. No wonder it's so tough to get rid of. It's just living the life. Then we have brown fat, which is the hot new sizzling neighbor on the block. I mean, like, seriously, it's very, very metabolically active and burns at a rather high rate. This fat is key for keeping us warm. It has vastly more mitochondria, which are the energy-producing organelles that sit inside each and every cell. And having this vast amount of mitochondria basically torches our fat cells like it's one of Elon's rockets leaving the atmosphere. That isn't a scientifically proven fact. I just thought it was, a good analogy. So, analogy, not fact. Analogy, not fact. But you like the sound of that though, right? Unfortunately, this type of metabolically active fat makes up a small percentage of our overall fat stores. But we can actually do something about that. The metabolic conversion. Guess what? We have a fat superpower. Dun 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 dun! No. I hate you, production team. And it's that very cool capability to convert white adipose tissue to brown adipose tissue when the situation is right. This conversion takes place under a series of conditions when the body needs to ramp up things such as heat production, to stay warm. The research is still very new in this field, but there are a few ways that have been shown to stimulate this conversion, mainly in animal models. First, turn down the temperature and shiver without shivering. Cold exposure, like a cold shower, an ice bath, jumping in a cold body of water, turns on a process called non-shivering thermogenesis, where the body essentially converts white adipose tissue, white fat, to brown adipose tissue, brown fat, or brown-like fat, actually called beige fat, but we won't get into it. Increasing the amount of mitochondria in the cell, thus fat burn for heat output. Pretty cool. And the second, exercise. The research to date, again, mostly in animal models, suggests exercise increases the levels of a protein called irisin, which has been shown in mouse models to convert white fat to brown fat. Humans have this protein as well, and levels of this protein increase when humans do something like intense aerobic interval training. And not surprisingly, sedentary people have lower levels of irisin compared to people who exercise often. This just adds to the laundry list of benefits we get when we exercise. So, friendly reminder, move. Now, all of this is great, but where did that evil villain go? Inflammation. Here's the deal. We know that inflammation is both good and bad, and it is highly dependent on the context in which the inflammation occurs. If you need a refresher, check out these videos here. I will also link them all below. They will break it all down. So let's look at some research as it pertains to inflammation and fat burning. A rather recent study from 2017 looked into exactly that. Inflammation's role in white adipose to brown adipose tissue conversions. And it found that inflammation doesn't just go silently into the night. Oh, no, 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 no. First, as you know before, brown adipose tissue has an extremely high number of mitochondria. These cellular power stations burn through white fat, converting them into thermal energy. The research found that a nucleotide messenger called cyclic guanosine monophosphate, CGMP, plays an important role in this conversion. Knowing this, they fed a mouse model a high-calorie diet, mimicking the standard Western diet, and examined the changes in the animal's fat tissue. And the findings were interesting. hardly any changes occurred in the subcutaneous fat, and CGMP signaling was left rather intact. But things were a lot different in that deep abdominal fat. This fat began to accumulate, weight was gained, inflammation became rabid, and the fat-burning turbocharger CGMP was silenced. Oh boy. Researchers also tested samples of human subcutaneous and abdominal fat and found similar changes. So let's recap. If you remember from before, visceral fat or that abdominal fat is that dangerous fat, which means it is more important to get rid of. Yet, inflammation silences this key fat burning pathway. So when you are deciding what health protocols to implement, this is just another reason why you want all of them to have some sort of focus or impact on reducing chronic inflammation. So let's talk about some things that do just that. How to reduce inflammation. We have covered this topic in a number of other videos at this point, to the extent that I am now pondering if we need a inflammation specific playlist on this channel, which we might do. I think it'd be super cool. But the gist of it is getting a grip on inflammation, understanding what drives it and how to reduce it is one of the best short-term and long-term investments we can all make, period. So here are some practical lifestyle and environmental tips to keep in mind. First, we're going to talk about what you need to reduce. Number one, gut permeability. Your gut wall is the barrier from the outside world to your inside world. And on the internal side is where about 60% of our immune system chills out. They're probably not that chill though. They're probably very active. The breakdown or separation of our gut epithelial cells is a common occurrence. And the majority of the time it is driven by lifestyle and environmental conditions, such as a highly processed, highly refined diet, antibiotic overuse, environmental toxins, and lack of sleep and exercise. All of this drives leaky gut and is a one-way ticket to low-dose chronic inflammation. So we want to solidify and strengthen that gut wall. A lot of the other habits that we're about to talk about will do just that. If you want a deep dive, check out this video here. Next, we want to reduce highly processed, highly refined foods, especially rancid oils, aka the vegetable oils, the canola oils, the peanut, sunflower, and sapphire oils. The oils that we find in many of our processed snacks, because dietary fat plays a key role in building our cellular membranes. And if it is a low quality, it can drive an inflammatory response for an extended period of time, feeding into the state of systemic inflammation. And these type of foods promote the accumulation of visceral fat when eaten in excess. And let's be honest, that's the only way that they are typically eaten. Next, reduce those environmental toxins. This is often overlooked, but we need to keep in mind that everything that we put on us and in us has a direct and indirect impact on our short-term and long-term health, including levels of inflammation. Cleaning supplies and body care items with harsh synthetic chemicals will disrupt internal cellular processes and drive dysfunction and inflammation. Simple rule, if you wouldn't eat it, don't put it on you. Lastly, the problem with inconsistent sporadic sleep. If you want to be operating at an optimal level, you need to prioritize sleep. It is the foundation of all things health. And if you need some more convincing, we have a full playlist dedicated to it on this channel. I'll link it above, link it below. Check it out. Poor, inconsistent, sporadic sleep will put you in a compromised cellular and metabolic state, thus feeding into systemic inflammation's evil plan. So you gotta pay attention here. With that, we then want to increase basically the opposite of everything we just talked about. First, increase exercise. As we covered before, aerobic interval training can be a way to stimulate that conversion of white adipose to brown adipose tissue. But exercise in general has been shown through many studies to be a great way to lower inflammation throughout the body. So do it. And if you need some help, I've got a couple of hundred, workout videos on this channel, so check it out. Should keep you busy for a while. Next, we're back. Sleep. I feel like we just talked about this. Good, consistent sleep rebuilds, restores, and detoxifies the body. It also rebuilds and keeps the immune system in check. So prioritize your 8 hours each and every night. Again, check out that playlist if you need some extra convincing. Then we want to increase the consumption of real whole organic foods. Because real whole foods, whether they are animal-based or plant-based, drastically improve our cellular and metabolic function. And we cover it in depth here. But long story short, in the majority of cases, good quality food lowers inflammation, reduces visceral fat, normalizes glucose and hormone levels, and ramps up longevity pathways. Good food is good. So eat it. And if you want to take it to the next level, you can look into something called meal structure, intermittent fasted, time restricted feeding. We have 40 plus videos on this channel and rising on a consistent basis around the science of improving our longevity with intermittent fasting and time restricted feeding, all linked below. Lastly, we finish up with increasing levels of cold and heat exposure. As we discussed before, cold exposure is one of the ways to convert that white adipose tissue to that metabolically active brown adipose tissue. But it also helps reduce inflammation. And so can heat stress, acting in many of the same mechanistic ways as exercise. So things like weekly hot baths or weekly saunas can be beneficial here. So when in doubt, turn up or turn down the temperature and go get a little uncomfortable. Come on, because we know everything great happens on the other side of the comfort zone. That's what I got for you today. Hopefully you can add some of these strategies to your arsenal of inflammation fighting tools. As always, let me know what comments, questions, any random thoughts you have down below. And I gotta go because I have an appointment that I don't want to be late for with the frigid February Atlantic Ocean up here in New York. So you wanna come? I could use some emotional support. You will? All right, come on. Let's go.